on this computer. How about that? Okay, looks like it's recording. So here we go. Good morning, Scott Quimby from Computer Systems Integrating. We're going to be talking today about hardening Active Directory Part 2. I did this in June, and no sooner did we stop that more information came in, so this is a continual theme. All right, so if we go forward, there was an attack, a fake pet attack in Ukraine. And the scary thing is, if you remember my June discussion, I talked about an actual case, 120 minutes from infection of a limited user exposed to a domain account. The entire network was gone. And, well, they got it down to 4 minutes. And what happened in Ukraine, it looked like a ransomware attack. It was actually cyber warfare, probably the Russians, I guess. Basically what they did is they put out a pet that looked like ransomware, but it wasn't really ransomware. Limited user got infected, a tech with a domain admin came across and basically went to investigate the machine, exposed domain admin to the machine, and within 4 minutes, 50 to 60% of the machines on the network were compromised. It pretended to be running check disks. That was it, eating the master boot records on the workstations and the servers. It pretended to be ransomware, thinking that maybe there might be hope that your data was there, but there was no key. It was all a lie. In fact, its only purpose, and more of this stuff is this way, is to destroy every bit of data you have. The alternate screens were just a diversion to throw you off the set. All domain controllers were destroyed, all data was destroyed, all servers were destroyed, all Active Directory was destroyed. All IoT devices relying on the network and LDAP, things like that, HVAC, security, etc., destroyed. Phones were blown up. All ESX hosts were erased. And that's it. It all happened. Limited user was infected. Tech came along with domain admin to examine why they were having this squirrely thing. What it did, and it's actually pretty imaginative in terms of attack. Once it was unlocked, exposed to domain admin, it launched systerнал's psexec. That's a Microsoft program. It's essentially a remote executable. It's a pretty cool program, and simultaneously launched the destructive worm against all machines at the same time. 4 minutes, for 50, 60% of the servers and workstations were already infected and being destroyed. It also had multiple attack vectors, so it looked for every possible weakness, you know, SMB, all those other ones that are out there once it was there, to find any way to throw this as fast as possible onto everything. It deleted all event logs, so you couldn't even look to see that you were being killed. And again, everything was destroyed. Now, their only good news is that not for any policy reason, but they had taken a snapshot of a domain controller, and they had a completely isolated sandbox that had nothing to do with their network. And they put this domain controller over there to do some prototyping. What happened is, since that was a completely isolated sandbox with nothing to do with their network, air gap, that's the word we've used before, air gap. What happens is that actually was the only copy of Active Directory that existed. Their backups were gone. Everything was gone, right? Everything was gone. It just ate anything that was data that it could touch that wasn't air gap. And they actually took that DC, and that they had to rebuild the network from scratch, starting with that DC, which at least had users and groups and credentials and the like, at least at the point of that snapshot. And because there was no other snapshot in existence other than DC, all the normal Microsoft rules about you can't roll back, all that stuff, were irrelevant because it wasn't there. When I picked up the story, it was a month later, and they were still highly compromised. Really scary stuff. Now, what could you do? We talked about last time. App Blocker, right? Don't let the thing get there to begin with. App Blocker is available in Windows 10 Education, Windows 10 Enterprise, not Windows 10 Pro, not Windows 10S. It's free, right? Where you can say, don't let that limited user machine launch, get that anchor to be able to do that. We've done presentations on that before. I'm sure we'll do them again. The other thing, PS exec, right? You could blacklist it. The old, I don't like this. People shouldn't be running this without me. So you could just blacklist something like that, because I'm sure that was so effective and so fast, other people are going to use it. Back to, I actually, yesterday I looked, and the first time I did a presentation on this was June 2003. And what was I talking about? I was basically talking about whitelisting and blacklisting in June 2003, and here we are talking about it still. So what did we learn from this? We learned there are always going to be day zero attacks. No matter how smart your people are, how great your tools are, whatever, someday something's going to get by us, all right, by you. All right. We had a case this morning. I just sent out a note. Many of you probably received it. Many of you probably didn't read it yet because it just went out. CC Cleaner, which has been the gold standard for cleaning up workstations and servers and since the beginning of time. Version 5.3.3 has a Trojan in it. All right. I scan my machines with multiple things: Malwarebytes, SCCM endpoint, Cisco AMP. Nothing saw it before today. It's been sitting out there. Day zero, nobody knew it was there. Now today, Malwarebytes goes, oh, I see this Trojan because Cisco Talos Labs uncovered this. But there's a case of something that may be in your world, on all your workstations, on your servers. For those of you doing Palo and Sentinel monitoring, I've checked everything that we see, and you're clean. If you're not doing it, I don't know. But that was literally this morning before this call. That's what I was dealing with. So sooner or later, something's going to get through. Design systems that limit, their words was, limit the blast radius. These are the people on the ground in the Ukraine trying to fix this. To contain the damage, right? Air gap whenever possible, even though it's, just taking that DC and sticking it in the sandbox. That saved them just incredible amounts of time, even as bad as it was. Taking backups and putting them where they cannot be touched electronically, huge. Create isolation zones for techs. We talked about that last time. DC's DNS core management servers. The tighter the zones, the better, all right? It's the Wild West out there. You got to make your office the castle with the moat and the gate and as pristine as you can make it. How do they take advantage of this stuff? Over provision rights to help desk administrative staff. We're all techs. We want to basically not be told no. And so we give ourselves way too much rights. The domain admin account, sitting at your desk, doing email, doing whatever, because I need domain admin because I got to do admin stuff. Well, you need admin access. You don't need domain admin. We have to think different. I agree wholeheartedly that techs need admin access to manage the various aspects of the network. They do not need to sit there with domain admin access. Those days are over, right? You don't need everything open just to unlock the door. You need to unlock the door, all right? Outdated credentials. We create these accounts and we forget. Inheritance. We see this all the time where all of a sudden, confidential data is being exposed to people that shouldn't see it because of inheritance in Windows. I was dealing with a district over the summer. It's a case of you go reset inheritance because something's corrupted, and you blow up a inheritance block underneath it, and all of a sudden people are looking at special ed files or superintendent's files or whatever. That goes down to design and just make sure you check your effective rights. We've done presentations on that. And when these people are checking you out, they're externally probing you through phishing. They're internally examining you if they have something, an anchor in your network, even a limited user mapping you out. We've talked about that. Hacker tools showing weak permissions, all right? Managed security groups. And what we're looking for, and it's really a simple PowerShoot command. It's mindless, right? To turn around and say, who's allowed to reset password? Who's allowed to manage groups? Who has extra rights on people? Who has full control? Who can add members? This takes seconds for them to determine. And then hacking to collect and correlate data. This is all this machine learning where they basically map you out. This is a new one that they were talking about. And those of you with Exchange have probably faced this. Okay, those of you with Exchange know that if you're a domain admin, it's hard to configure, say, ActiveSync for you. And the reason is because these protected groups come along and reset rights on a clock. And this ACL is the one that does that. And so what happens, much like viruses that got in and then altered antivirus, got in undetected and then would alter various vendors' antiviruses to run correctly, except exclude the infection. Well, same thing is going on here, that it gets in and then it takes the sweep control that Microsoft has to protect the protected groups, and it alters it so that the bad guy can live even after the sweep. So that's a new one, for me anyway. Theft credential, delegation allows impersonation. I was thinking about this, right? Where we come out of the summer, we have all this rash of teacher accounts compromised, right? And you're sending out all these Cialis ads and all this other spam and getting rate limited, and we got to change passwords and all that stuff. Well, now that we're moving to the cloud for a lot of resources, Google Classroom, Google Apps, Google Drive, about to be Drive Stream or whatever, they're killing Google Drive. OneDrive for Business, which is SharePoint and Office 365. You turn around to this more and more people, personally identifiable information out on those shared drives, whatever. People get a hold of credentials. Well, what if they're not sending out Cialis ads? What if they're just getting at your data? How do you know, right? How do you know the guy from Kazakhstan is not sitting in as a teacher sifting through your share folders in the cloud? That's something we're going to be talking. I know Bob's going to be talking more and more about as to how can we protect, ourselves with people coming in through impersonation, taking credentials, but not doing something really stupid like rate limit where you're going to show up on our radar, but actually using it to do that. This just came out, 400 million PCs at risk, bashware. Microsoft put the Linux prompt in Windows 10. So now there's this bashware malware, which basically anti-malware devices really can't detect. Isn't that great? So again, it doesn't matter, your domain admin, you multi-factor to log in. That's great. But once you're in, you hold the keys to the kingdom. And if you can't see this stuff like CC Cleaner that was infected for 2 months and nobody knew it, or now this bashware thing, you're just giving your network away. Bluetooth, this just came out, right? Bluetooth flaw, even if you're not connected, we can use Bluetooth to get into you. Office 365 attack, this kind of goes to the other theme. This is very recent. Using funky characters that basically get Office 365 to roll over and go. The interesting thing about this one, though, the email body contains no links, which negates many of the safe link methods used by Microsoft. So if the user scans for malicious HTML file or antivirus solutions, the file is not identified as malicious. This is locally generated links to bad things. So nobody knows that it's bad. And somehow they got Office 365 to roll over and give itself up to allow these things to go in. Scary, scary stuff. Okay. All right, ways to prevent this. I've been harping on this for quite a while now, and I get pushback. I got pushback from a district a couple weeks ago. I need to be domain admin to do my job. No, you don't. You need admin rights to do your job. It's a big difference. Don't examine any workstations with a domain admin ID. No tech is required to have a domain admin ID for workstation work. We can do it other ways. Multi-factor authentication, that's the excuse. Well, I do multi-factor to log in, so therefore I'm protected. No, you're not. You're just protected against someone may not be able to log in with your ID directly, but that doesn't mean you can't promote an infection by tripping over it on a limited access machine. Sorry about the noise. They're banging the lawnmower into the wall outside here. So what you do, and this is how I've been operating now, and create a limited ID with no drive mappings, maybe a drive mapping read only to an updates folder, right? I had this the other day. I had a district that had malware on a high school data server. So what did I do? I created a limit. I had a domain admin ID, but I created a limited ID with no drive mappings, right? And then I went in through VMware, through the console there, to have no RDP connection, right? And I logged in as limited. I made my limited ID a local admin, and then I was able to set myself up and find the 29 pieces of malware. So this is kind of how you do that. So here I am. I go here and I select manage in Active Directory users' computers on the computer I need to go in and investigate, right? And then I go into the administrators group and perhaps a remote desktop group, but don't bring your drives along if you do remote desktop. Some of you use other tools to do this as well. And then basically I go to that machine and now I have no exposure to the network. Yes, the workstation is exposed, but I gotta be able to install software and configure printers and the like. Now the danger with what we just did here is I put myself in to these groups, but do I take myself out of these groups? Right? So I did what I came here to do. Oh, great, I'm fixed. Oh, they're like a crisis, and you forget. And all of a sudden, you're like leaving extra rights for yourself. Implement LAPS, Local Administrator Password Management. This is free. You put a small MSI on each on the DC and each workstation. Now, this allows you to select through Active Directory users and computers and see the current local workstation password and the administrator ID being used. It automatically updates. So you go back to right now, most of you still, you image your machines and you have one or maybe a handful of local admin IDs and passwords for all of your stuff. If someone, back to that limited user, if someone hacks the local admin account, they can jump across the network because you're probably mostly the same, if not all the same. So what this allows you to do is you have 1,500 computers, you have 1,500 unique local admin passwords. The fact that machine X is compromised, it stinks, but it basically, the bad guy has no place to go because anything they learn about the infected machine is irrelevant for the other machines, because it's a limited user. I'm not, even when I go to look at why are you broken, I'm still not giving up the keys. When we put laps in, it's pretty simple. We have a GPO here, and the GPO allows us to configure this. So do we want laps to manage local admin passwords? And we do it by OU. So we pick OUs that we have workstations in, and then we go. Then we say, what do we want for password complexity for the local admin password? And then we say, are we using some admin account that's not administrator? You know, if we're, you know, which is a best practice, right? Don't use administrator, make something up. So we're going to make up that our local admin account is, you know, pizza box, and basically you put it in what we're managing. And then basically what happens is, do we want to be a hard ass, and do we want to basically say, you go longer than the time because you took this machine out of my world, drop dead, right? To basically say, when the password expires, you're dead. I have no grace, essentially. All right. Now, when you do that, what you do is you basically create the password, you know, local workstation and local server, quite frankly, password manager group, for instance, block visibility for every other group to see these fields in the OU. And then what happens is, in the advanced mode of Active Directory users and computers, you go to attribute and you find this ms-msc-admin password. That is the local admin password that exists right now for the device called 81 client. And any tech that's in the password management group can just look it up, and there you go. So you have 1,500 computers, you got 1,500 unique passwords. That's the password that works today. If the password policy is going to change tomorrow, you just come back and it's going to tell you the password tomorrow. And it's free and it's automatic. Now, if you want to do this via the GUI, there's a GUI interface. And again, if you are in the chosen group for password management, you could put in a computer name, and you could actually put this on your desk like a RSAT tool. If you're in the group allowed to see the passwords, even, you know, your limited tech ID, for instance, you know, at your desk, limited Scott, whatever, normal user, you put in the computer name and it will just tell you the password. It'll tell you when the password expires. If I wish to reset the computer name, because the password, if I just use it, I just click on set, and that will reset the password right now, and it will regenerate something. If I have no rights and I somehow get across the lapse tool, the password will be blank, right? Pretty cool stuff and free. My guess to set that up is a couple hours. I mean, it's MSI. You could push it out via Case, via Alteris, via SCCM to the clients, and then we just have to create the group and do some ACL work. So my guess is, worst case is it's a couple hours of work. So if you want to help with that, let us know. The only thing that is pushing it out is no big deal. The only thing you do is you have to go into ADC edit and kind of block some rights and define that group. That's the thinking and the, you know, the more intense part, so to speak. So anyway, that's how that works. You can also do laps by PowerShell. So if you're a PowerShell person, you can just do this command, bam, and when you want it, and that resets the password. Other recommendations really smart people are making: if you have to have a privileged account, use it only on a privileged workstation that doesn't have the attack surface that others. All right. So again, if I do truly have to use domain admin or those type of things, I'm going to not use the machine at my desk that I surf out, you know, to look at other stuff on. I'm going to go to a machine, probably a VM in our world, right? That's a separate VLAN, hyper vigilant about patches. I look for updates for antivirus and everything every day. Regular scan for infections. This CC cleaner thing, it's been sitting out there as a day zero thing that nobody knew for 2 months and nobody saw it. Today, the tool saw it. Okay, so that's why you need to not only have current signatures, but you need to scan the 29 malware pieces on the high school server the other day, right? It's been sitting out there and scanning it. It found things that weren't known before. You know, on this privileged workstation, no flash Java, we want this boring. You don't web browse to it. You don't day to day. You basically, there's no connection between your workstation and it in terms of bleeding through, right? If you have to use a privilege. One of the things they're suggesting, rename privilege accounts with some convention that's going to stand out in the logs. So the logs become white noise, right? As you're looking through, massive amounts of data. So one person suggested like doing a P, capital P underscore for privilege, just to make it look weird in the log so you could see it. One of the things they're suggesting, and I think it's probably a pretty good idea, is that the tech workstations that the tech departments, that's you guys on the call, are using to actively do your work, that we should probably put that under active monitoring like Paladin Sentinel, so we can kind of see if there's any weirdness afoot as an extra level of, back to the tech office is the castle with the moat and the door, and you basically gotta be hyper vigilant. So that's one thing they're talking about. Things to monitor for, and these are things it creates, the report is kind of noisy, and I do have a daily report and Paladin Sentinel if you guys wanted to do some of the stuff, and I will be updating it to try to get much more of this stuff in. It's a bit of a noisy report, but it's really kind of telling you things like this. Suggestions: special privileges assigned to new login, group membership to new login. Special groups have been assigned to a new login. And then the built-in logins, all root administrator logins, login types, RDP, scheduled task services, WMI, PowerShell, and the like. We can do a lot of this with Paladin Sentinel. Like I said, I do have a daily report, which I generally don't send out to most people because unless you're committed to reading it, you're going to just zone out. But if you want it, I'm happy to send it to you because I do produce it and as a PDF, and I'm going to go back through and try to add some more of this stuff, which unfortunately will make it a bit more of a white noise thing, but in terms of trying to see some visibility for this. The other thing they're saying we have to start paying attention to is managed by, because what they're saying is what happens is the bad guys start playing games with managed by, and they take over managed by, and they start dropping their accounts into it to get at stuff. So they're basically saying on workstations, servers, and groups and the like, start paying attention to the manage by field because that could be a sign of infection. Again, some review from last time. We're doing good on time. Deal with your main issues. Email attachments, block executables, advanced spam filtering. Make sure you're not just going out to Google DNS or your ISP DNS. Take yourself through OpenDNS, the free stuff, because that'll at least trap out the first level of malware. And I've said before, Bob has seen just in some of the IPS sensors and Firesight and stuff like that, he's seen DCs that are going to Google making weird requests that they don't make if they go to OpenDNS, that things that look suspicious. So that's just mindless. Just set a forwarder in your DNS to, get rid of root hints, set a forwarder to go to OpenDNS, which is now called Cisco Umbrella. Make sure you're doing web filtering, patching, still a big thing. I still go around and find people not patching. Limited users, and again, OpenDNS. Things like social engineering, know before that the RIC offers, and some people have done directly, really good at training your users to be smarter. App blocker, file resource scanning for file types, big deals here. All right, said this last time, just enough administration. This goes back to, well, you can't take domain admin away from me because I need that to do my job. No, what you need is just enough administration to do your job. All right. So what we want to do, and Windows Server 2016 actually has this in their patches for older versions as well. The concept of just enough admin, where what we do is we set up scenarios where the limited user, limited Scott, sitting at my desk becomes a DNS administrator on the fly to fix a legitimate problem. And we do this through PowerShell. And now I'm going to try something, and hopefully it'll work. Let me see here. This is a little video that basically from Microsoft that does this. So I'm going to try this, and hopefully you're going to tell me you can hear this. This is Brave New World to me.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm a program manager on the Windows Server and Service Center at Microsoft. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of the new Windows Server security features coming in Server 2016 called Just Enough Administration. It's a role-based security feature in PowerShell that can help you reduce how many administrators you have in your environment, as well as what they can do when they have those privileges. Imagine you're an IT admin and your monitoring software notifies you that one of your DNS servers has a poisoned DNS cache. The affected server also happens to be a primary domain controller for your domain, contoso.com. Now you know that there's a command in PowerShell to be able to fix this poisoned DNS cache, so you decide to use PowerShell remoting and sign into the server with your administrator credentials. Once you're in there, you go ahead and search for that command to fix the poisoned DNS cache. There it is, clear DNS server cache. Go ahead and run that, and you're done. Now you can go ahead and close that support ticket, and everything's all back to normal. So that was a really easy demo of how someone can use PowerShell to fix a poisoned DNS cache. But there's a problem in how we did this, and that is that we connected to a domain controller using administrator credentials in order to be able to run this clear DNS server cache command. And that means that when I signed in, I was effectively operating as a domain admin. And as a domain admin, I can do whatever I want. If I were a malicious administrator or an attacker had obtained my credentials through a phishing attack, I could do anything such as installing arbitrary software, running other commands on this machine, such as commands to query the Active Directory database. I could even copy the entire database off to a USB stick and then take it to a different machine, run some free software from the internet on it, and try to crack passwords of other users who have access to resources I currently don't have. This is a problem, and it's one not helped by the binary nature of Windows administration. When you sign in Windows, you're usually either an administrator or you're not. Some tools like Active Directory included role-based access control solutions, or RBAC, which help you delegate access to specific users to perform some administrative commands in Active Directory. But the problem with such RBAC tools is that they're specific to the application for which they were written. I can't use the Active Directory RBAC to go constrain access to DNS or IIS or Hyper-V. I need different RBAC tools for each of those, and there are some things that you can't even RBAC in the first place. This is what Just Enough Administration is designed to solve. Just Enough Administration comes pre-installed in Windows Server 2016, and it provides a generic role-based access control solution that uses PowerShell remoting. GIA is unique because it's a platform. You can use GIA to add RBAC functionality to anything that can be managed through PowerShell. Let's take a look at what that means for our original DNS scenario. I'm going to use PowerShell again to connect to the server, but this time I'm going to connect to a GIA endpoint. The GIA endpoint was created by a highly trusted admin who configured it to give me access to all the commands I need to fix any DNS problems. That includes everything in the DNS module, as well as some other commands like restart service in case the DNS service has crashed. And more importantly, I'm connecting with non-administrator credentials. I can't use these credentials to use remote desktop onto this PC, for example. All right, so now we're in the GIA session. So the first thing we're going to do, let's go take a look at the identity under which I'm running in this GIA session. So I'm going to run this custom command I wrote, get user info. That's going to print out some information about the underlying PowerShell context. You'll see here that there is this connected user. That's who I signed in with. It's my day-to-day average account. This account is not permissioned to manage the domain controller. But my run as user, that is the account under which all the commands I run are executed, is this WinRM virtual account. And you'll see my name is attached to the name of it. This is a one-time virtual account that was spun up for the duration of this PowerShell session, and it is locally permissioned to be an administrator on this machine. That means I can run commands that require elevated permissions without actually signing in with those permissions. And that's very powerful. So again, let's repeat what we did earlier. Get command, DNS cache. Seems I still have all the right commands I need. I can run clear DNS server cache. And there we go. Pretty much the same exact experience we had before, but this time I didn't have to sign in with admin credentials. And as I mentioned earlier, I can also do things like restart service. But what's important is I can't restart other services that aren't relevant to my role as a DNS admin. For example, I can't go restart the WinRM service because that's not important to me as a DNS admin. That highly trusted administrator decided I didn't need that. Similarly, I can't go browse the file system. By default in GIA, the file system is not exposed to prevent information disclosure. There's simply no need for me to browse the file system as a DNS admin. So you can see here that as a DNS admin using GIA, I have just enough rights on the system to get my job done. I can run any PowerShell or command line tool that this highly trusted admin gave me access to. And in this example, we talked exclusively about DNS servers, but you could configure these roles for whatever you have on your system. You could use it to manage Hyper-V, Internet Information Services, third-party programs that are programmable through the command line. The choice is yours. GIA is there to help you create effective role-based access policies for the management tools on your machine. So let's recap what I did in this video. I started by showing how a DNS admin may need domain admin privileges if he has to perform actions not covered by existing RBAC tools and the risk that that action poses. We then took a quick look at Just Enough Administration, which allowed me to use non-admin credentials to run specific commands related to my role on the DNS server. I wasn't able to do things that aren't related to my role as a DNS admin, but everything I had to do to clear this poison DNS cache, I could do.
All right. So hopefully you get a good idea of what Just Enough Admin does. GIA. It answers the question, but I need admin access to do my job. Absolutely, you do. So in this, the fact that he was able, in his example, to give you one-time virtual IDs that have admin access to the tasks that you need to do while you're sitting at your desk as lowly limited user is how it needs to get done. And that's built into Server 2016. And there's some patches to go backwards on some of that functionality. But that's what we're talking about, giving you the access to do your job with the administration through delegation, through GIA, and the like, but at the same time, sitting there, not exposing the network to you, both at your desk as you, or as you go out into the wild west of your environment, looking at that limited user workstation that's reporting some sort of issue, approaching it with a limited domain user account so that you do not expose the network to it in any way that it can act upon it, and then using LAPS to get local admin access and allow those passwords to all be dynamic. So even if the machine is hacked and compromised, it's one machine with one password, and it has nothing to do with my example, the other 1,499 machines you have. That's what we have to do. The reality is almost any work attack begins at a workstation. You can watch the Hardening Active Directory Part 1 webinar if you want at that link. There's a PDF here which Lisa can get you. We're going to post this up on the website probably either today or tomorrow too, if you have people that want to watch that. As we wrap up here, I think we're doing pretty good on time. Things coming up. These are the dates in our office for the Tech Talk meetings. The one coming up in a couple of weeks is Tuesday, October 17th. Snow date is for We Need It is listed there. We feed you breakfast and lunch. If you have not come before, please come talk to Lisa to register for this. The webinar dates are listed below. The next webinar we're going to do internally is on the 14th of November. I'm going to talk about some email troubleshooting, Exchange, Office 365, rate limits, blacklists, some of the logs and the like. So that's the topic in November. There'll be a thing up on the website soon to sign up for that. If you're interested, I know Lisa has a bunch of other events and planning stages, so you can check our event calendar or talk to Lisa. We have some other webinars that will be showing up on the calendar for specific topics, and some other seminars in office for specific topics that Lisa will contact you for if you're interested in attending. So with that, that's what I had today. I'm getting you out on time. Let me see here if I can figure out the interface for this new webinar thing. If people have questions, you type it in the chat. I am basically